Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for coming. Today is the first of the two-part overview summary on the first chapter of Bhagavad-Gita entitled Observing the Armies on the Battlefield of Kurukshetra. And we, because these are facilitations, a little bit different, we make this a collective offering, not just me, but all of us together, especially for the benefit of people who are listening on the radio, perhaps. Our perfection of life, of every activity, because we have to act, is that every activity is designed to hopefully please Krishna. That's the intention and that's the desire. And the final step in life, to perfect our life, would be to remember Krishna at the time of death. So all of us who are here are very fortunate to have at least understood that, right? We all have to face that final test, and the study of the Bhagavad-Gita has been recommended, of course, by Srila Prabhupada as being a good way to absorb the intelligence. The Shastras are given to us by the Acharyas so that the mind it helps us control the mind. But beyond that, it gives us the information to know how to act. So the Bhagavad-Gita is our reference point. Otherwise, we're in darkness. We wouldn't know how to function in this world. And I find it particularly helpful in the first chapter myself, having come from the West and not having grown up as some of you from India, knowing about Krishna or have heard about Krishna. But to read the first chapter without Prabhupada's commentaries, it wouldn't have made much sense. And many devotees who distribute books even find it's becoming a growing concern in India also, that people may even have learned the slokas, but if they're asked to explain them, they perhaps would hesitate and maybe not even have the correct understanding. So we're all especially grateful for Srila Prabhupada to giving us the key to eternal life. We have that option, and it's up to us to take it. Prabhupada writes, and he speaks on a lecture in this chapter. He said each of us has to fly his own airplane. We have to fly our own airplanes. And we have to be good pilots when we're up in the air. No one can help us. So at least on the ground, he says we can help each other. The acharyas are there to advise us. But at every step, the decision is ours as to whether we will elevate or degrade. And hopefully at the time of death, at least if we've done our best this lifetime, perhaps we can elevate to a better position to continue our progress spiritually back home to God. Okay, so with that introduction, what we do is we go over our little handouts as you received today. And a facilitation is quite different. It's based on outcomes. It's based on what the participants actually have as take-home points when they go home, when they leave the prescribed period. And for those of us, I mean, in my case, I had to be a school teacher, so that was actually our focus. That it wasn't just that we lectured, but that we had to present things in such a way that after the prescribed learning period, that we had clear objectives and that we were able to accomplish them. So when you take a look at your packet, you will see that and Abhai's going to help us with the slides, that we have stated right at the beginning what are the things that are very important for us to know in this chapter. And as we said before, this information is just not academic. It is essential to our spiritual understanding. But even then, some factual points are necessary to orient ourselves. So we do that systematically. We cover some factual points, and then further we go into, well, what are some of the philosophical points and themes? And then finally we run through the slides. And then tomorrow we're going to make an extension class on perhaps concluding the slides, but giving you scientific, with video clips, scientific support to any challenges that this is a myth, Krishna is a myth, Kurukshetra is a myth, the Saraswati River is a myth. I find it so hard to believe people can make those statements when, you know, you see whole civilizations along the Saraswati riverbed, and so much evidence archaeologically, but we have a couple of videos that we showed 2 years ago, actually. And I thought it good to do it again, because These clips verify scientifically by astrological calculations that everything in the Mahabharata to the letter is correct. So we know it's not a myth. And just because these things seem a little strange and they don't tally with our imagination, I like to use one example before we start, and that's, for instance, things we've gotten accustomed to. For instance, people have smartphones or tablets or computers. When I grew up, this was not known. And I used to do art before, and if I wanted to make a slide or something, or if I wanted to do a printout like this, I'd have to go to the art shop. I'd have to buy a sheet of press type. I'd have to pick the font. I'd have to press every letter down. And we're talking about maybe 30, 40 years ago, right? If I wanted to make a line, I'd have to press the line down. If I wanted to change the font, I'd have to go back to the art store and buy a different font. But now on this tablet, I can press a button and select type. It's instantly pasted. I can press another button, select everything, change the font, change the color in seconds. Is that mythology? To someone who this doesn't seem possible, or let's just say some Aborigines people were told about this, they would say, well, that's impossible. It's mythology. Or let's just say this whole civilization will collapse. And that some people who are coming along afterwards and they perhaps read about all these things, oh no, that was mythology. So because things don't tally with our imagination, people will say, well, oh, that's mythology. So we as devotees, because Prabhupada said most people now don't believe in the scriptures even, but to speak of following them, they may say, oh, that's myth. But as devotees, we have to actually have scientific support in our beliefs as well as just faith, and be able to answer their questions. If they're challenging, they're in denial, then you can't do much. But at least if they're merely just skeptical or curious, if you have scientific support, it just might help them come closer to Krishna. Okay, so tomorrow we'll be doing a little bit of that as well. All right, so let's take a look at what are some important things for us to know, starting with most general and advancing to more specific, because Prabhupada said study systematically. So to do that, we'll take a look at this. Do we have enough lighting in here for everybody? I know for myself that might be. Can everybody see enough on your papers? Yeah, I have a board, that's all right. All right, so we're going to go now to our instructional objectives checklist, and Abhay is going to have us, our first slide will be to help us learn a point, and then on the inside, by the way, you have two sections here. You have some charts, and you also have what we just call learning materials, resources. All right. Now, the first thing we need to know, sounds pretty general, but we need to know the title of the chapter. Now, that may seem elementary to those of you participating here, but surprisingly, many people may not know that, right? So the first title, and you'll find here on our slide, is Observing the Armies on the what? Right, so say it loudly, because we're asking for a little bit of participation. That helps you remember better. So it's Observing the Armies, and where? On the battlefield of Kurukshetra. All right, so two things are happening here. We're going to be observing the armies, and where is it going to be? On the battlefield of Kurukshetra. All right, so that, later on, if you have a chance, in your blanks on the other page, you can start to fill this in, because that gives you a way to say, yes, I know that. And you can use codes. You could say OA for observing the armies, and then BK, battlefield of Kurukshetra. Shorthand, right? Abbreviations. Don't be afraid to do it. It's a good way to study, and we do it all the time. We say ISKCON. We don't always say the whole thing. Okay? So everybody knows the first general point. The second general point is, well, what's the number of the chapter? What is it? 1. Okay, it's the first one. And we're going to discuss a little bit about that as to what part this chapter plays. Some people may not think it's so important, but actually, what's the function of this particular chapter? The Gita is an archetype for narratives, instructional narratives. So we'll see, well, what's the function of this chapter, besides just giving us some information? It has a part, a very important part. So we know that. And now the third part is we need to know how long it is. Prabhupada said you should know the books like lawyers. And somebody, oh, do I need to know that? Well, why not, if it's not that hard? So how many slokas do we find in this chapter? 46. Now, what we do when we have to remember a number, and we do this in instructional objectives, is we do an anchor link. Something that is 46 that helps us remember the number. So for instance, how many letters are there in the Sanskrit alphabet? How many? 46. 46. Okay. 46 characters. So we know now 3 or 4 things, and you can mark them in your little booklet if you like. That way you can fill it in. And you know, you yourself be your own assessor. As Prabhupada said, we have to fly our own airplanes. And someone isn't going to come at the moment of death and say, do you remember the numbers? In other words, anything that helps you meditate on Krishna in connection with Krishna is transcendental. And studying the Gita, he says, is worshiping me. So it's definitely a safe activity. All right, the next thing we need to know is this chapter is divided into 4 major sections. So how many do we have again? How many topics? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Which section of the Gita is it in? There are 3 divisions. Which section of the Gita will we find it in? Right. Say it loudly, everybody. Karma Yoga, right. And you see it here. And then you see in your little packet when you're given a chart, you're given a way to test yourself. It's one thing to give people information, but if you give them a way to write it in, the retention goes up to 70% as opposed to 20 or 30. So take a moment if you have time, or at home if you like to study and keep this with you, that if you write something down, retention goes up to 70%. I mean, the statistics are there, and I've experienced that in teaching children also. The more you write it, even some of our scholars like Burjan Prabhu and Narayani, they say to learn slokas, they write them out. So writing is a very powerful retention activity. All right, so now we know it's the first chapter, it's in the Karma Yoga section, and how many slokas again do we find? 46. All right, very good. So we've gotten that far. And the chapters will have subdivisions. It's not just all one thing. It's divided into how many subdivisions in this particular one? How many? Loudly? 4. Okay, and we have a chart on that one. We have a picture chart, and we also have a map, and we have another one, a code chart. So first of all, we'll look at the code chart first. We see at the bottom the size of each section, and above that, we'll see a code to help us remember. It makes it easy, right? All right, so at the bottom, we see odd numbers. We see 13, and actually all of them are prime numbers, if you know a little bit about math. That means they can be divided only by 1. So for numbers, because it's Kali Yuga, we need an anchor or some way to remember. So 13 and 1 and 19 are all prime. They cannot be divided evenly by another number. It's either 13 and 1 or 7 and 1 or 19 and 1, okay? And we'll see in the middle we have a repetition of 2 smaller sections, 7 and 7. The first section is 13, and the last is 19. Now let's take a look at the blank one really fast, and let's see how good you're doing. What's our first section? Who remembers the first number? Loudly? 13, and you can fill it in on your charts. You have them. And what's the second 2? 7. Both of them are 7. And does anybody remember the last number? 19. Very good. Yeah, you know, this may sound silly, but you'd be surprised if you're meditating on something, your mind is absorbed. The minute it isn't absorbed in the literature or chanting attentively, it's bound to be geared towards the sense gratification, right? It's going to go that way. So all of these facts help us fix the mind on Krishna. And also know the Gita very well. We're studying, remember? All right, so we remembered 13 and 2 7s and 19. All right, now let's go back and look at our code chart again. And we're going to do something, again, I used to do with students that were younger, but grown-ups who are lay people in a field are like children that are in older bodies. They're new to something, so they have to have simple learning methods. Sometimes people find this a little too elementary, but I find it works because you may have the scholar in your group, but most of the people who've come have come for help. So we're going to do 4 signals really quickly that'll help us remember. Remember how we use just some gestures? So the first one, you see PW, we're going to go like this. Can everybody do that? You won't forget it. This pushes it up to 90%. Preparing for war. Preparations for war. How many slokas are there? Right, and I think, well, we're spending a lot of time on this, but believe me, it's worth it. I won't get off the point too much, but when I was teaching younger children, we were training teachers in the school to get higher results because they're accountable. And the first semester, the new teachers were getting C's, D's, and F's. But when we used these methods, it went up to A's, B's, and C's. Nobody failed, and many people passed quite well. Just simple techniques. And we spent a whole week before we started the reading through the book, learning the skeleton, learning the charts, learning the highlights, learning the points, doing signals, and they all succeeded. So we know it works. We're not just using you as test run people. Okay? So tolerate it a little bit, but I think Malati knows it works, right? Madonna, you know, these things work. All right, so the second signal is easy. Signs of victory. Right, every drama has suspense. Who's going to win? So the first one was what? Loudly? Preparations for war, right? Everybody's lined up to fight till death. In Vedic time, they fought till death. You either come home dead or the victor. To come home the loser, the door will be locked. Don't show your face. It was a fight to death. This is no ordinary tea party. All right, so the second one was signs of victory. We're going to give clues to predicting the outcome. Any good drama will do that. If you ever watched Alfred Hitchcock films, there'll be clues right away. Who did it? Right? Who's going to win? The next one is Krishna. The next section, Krishna is Bhakti-Vatsal. This is where Krishna steps in. He doesn't step in right away. Bhakti-Vatsal. All right? So now we know 3 topics. We know preparations for war, signs of victory. Krishna is Bhakti-Vatsal, yes. How he loves to serve his pure devotee. And the final one is the largest one, and I don't know we'll be able to cover that in terms of slokas today, is Arjuna's doubts. What's the 4th one? Right, everybody can go like this. Have you ever felt as though you didn't know what to do? This is why we're here. You know, we want to know what to do and make the correct decisions. Gita's help us. Otherwise, we're on the mental platform. All right, so now let's look to the blank slide and see if we can fill in that part. What was the first topic again? Do you remember? Yeah, preparations for war. And what was the second one? Signs of victory. And what was the third one? Krishna is Bhakti-Vatsal. And what was the 4th one? Arjuna's doubts. All right, was that very hard? Was that hard, anybody? Yes? Was that difficult? No. You'll be surprised. This is called laying the groundwork, because once you've done that, everything else just goes into place. It gives you a structural foundation for all the other information. If you just go series, slide by slide, day by day, verse by verse, it's nice, but somehow you don't know where to put everything. This helps you orient, and it also helps you find things quickly. Somebody asked me something today over the phone, and I said, oh, well, there, and look there, and look there. You know, it helps you help other people find information they need to know. All right, so now we know those items. We know the topics, and we know the size. Let's take a look at the pictures to reinforce it. Pictures are quite important now on the phone. Everybody's looking at a picture. So there's our first one. What's the first topic again? Preparations for war, right. Okay, and the second one is what? Right, the conch, right? And the next one is? Yes, he's taken the humble position of being the driver. Being your chauffeur is not a very high-class position in a culture that's like, especially has, more divisions through the varnashram system. And what's the final section? All right, he's arguing with Krishna. He's arguing with Krishna. I don't want to do this. I'm not going to fight. And he's giving good reasons. But the reasons are based on the material conception of life. I am the body, and all of those who are related to me are my kinsmen. And the whole point of the Bhagavad-Gita is to help us break that misidentification, which to some degree or other we still have. And that lays the groundwork for chapter 2. You're not the body. Spiritual life begins with that understanding. If you don't have that understanding, there's not much chance for being spiritual. You are not the body. And this first whole chapter is based on arguments that are based on the material bodily conception of life. And the higher understanding will come in the next section of the Gita. All right, so now we've done that. We know the topics, we know the sections. These are all your take-home points. Very, very important. All right, now, let's see. Speakers. Arjuna's doubts. Oh, yeah, let's do Arjuna's doubts. Let's do some signals for that. Okay? Simple. There are 4 doubts. You see, he has 4 major ones. Some books describe 5. The study guide, that's one I first used, shows 4. Or if you read Burjan's book, he adds a 5th one, indecision. Okay, so he goes, let's go this way. Can everybody do this? Compassion. Right, he feels compassion for both sides, not only his side, but for the opposing side. They're relatives, remember? Bodily conception. They're my kinsmen, my, me, mine. The second one is enjoyment. What's the next one? Yeah, everybody's here trying to find a way to enjoy life. We're pleasure-seeking by nature. So the first one was what? Compassion. And the next one was what? Enjoyment, right. Don't be afraid to do the signal. You'll remember it like that. We're not giving you something difficult. You can do it like this and nobody will even know what you're doing. And the third one is what? Fear. Fear of sin. What I'm doing is going to be sinful. They don't see it, but I see it. And I'm going to suffer. And the final one is the destruction of a dynasty. I'm not only be killing, people right now, but the whole dynasty is going to be wiped out. That's major. That means it's going to affect all of the people in Pitraloka, all the forefathers who are waiting for oblations and not getting them. And the result of that is eternally residing in hell. That's pretty heavy. Okay, so the first one was what? Compassion. Say it loudly again. Okay, and the next one was what? Enjoyment. How can I enjoy if my relatives aren't around? And the third one was what? Fear of reaction, for killing not just ordinary people, teachers, gurus. They're not just relatives. They were teachers and gurus of very high stature. And the final one was what? Yes, it's like the domino theory. This leads to that. It's like the fall down sequence. This will lead to this, and this will lead to that, and it keeps going down, down, down until the whole situation becomes hellish. And we see that in the world now. Varna Shankara, everywhere, flourishing. So now we know the 4 topics, and we also know the 4 subdivisions of the last one. Okay? Got that? And you can find them on your charts. All right, now let's take a look at our chart again, because this is very important. We're spending a lot of time on the first page. But once you do this, everything just is filling in the fine points. All right, our next step, who are these speakers? Who are the speakers? Now, not the conch. I don't think we have a slide for that. We don't have a slide for that. But we have 5 speakers in this chapter. Now, we want to know why. Why so many? Usually it's just Krishna, some chapters on Krishna, Arjuna and Krishna. But we have Dhritarashtra, and we have, who else? Sanjaya, his secretary, and who else? Duryodhana, right? And who else? Arjuna, and who else? And Krishna. Krishna doesn't say too much. He's very humble. He has to be invited to speak after he's been accepted as a guru. You cannot walk up to somebody and start telling them what to do. It's not good etiquette. You don't have the right to do that. But if someone comes to you in a submissive mood, asks for advice, then you may give. But otherwise, you can't just march around and say, do this, do that, right? So Krishna's like that. He's a gentleman. He has to be invited to speak. And Arjuna has to be completely bewildered enough to surrender to him to that point. He has to give up and say, I can't answer this. You tell me what to do. All right, so everybody understand why we have 5? Now listen to this one. This is interesting. If Krishna and Arjuna were just speaking to each other at Kurukshetra, how would we know about it? Was there anybody there taking notes? No? Was there anybody there recording it for the for your hard drive? No. So who's listening? Sanjaya. Is he there? Where is he? He's in Hastinapur. How does he know? He has television of the heart. Yes. And where did he get that? He got it from whom? Vyasadeva. Now this is becoming full circle. Who wrote the book? Vyasadeva. He could have just told us this. But would it be very exciting if Vyasadeva just tells us to do all these things? No, he has to set it up in a very dramatic way. Now let's just say Sanjaya has television of the heart. He's sitting at the home the way we do. We just turn on the tube or we turn on our computer and we can watch the temple darshan. And nobody else will be there. But what if somebody's in the room who can't see? What will we do? We will describe it for that person. Well, what are the deities wearing today? Oh, they're wearing pink because it's Ekadasi, right? So do you see how the whole thing, how we have 5 personalities, how important they are? We would not have, we have to appreciate Sanjaya. We wouldn't know the Bhagavad-Gita if he weren't there telling us through Dhritarashtra, who can't see it. Also, it's very interesting how right away in this drama, from the first sloka, we get the important division of 2 kinds of people. The divine and the demoniac. The divine and the demoniac. That creates the plot, the interest. Dhritarashtra, what did they do? What did my sons and the sons of Pandu do? What did they do? Well, they've come for a fight. They're not going to sit and have lunch together. Right? What did they, first sloka, the whole thing is established. The whole thing. So how clever. Krishna is a brilliant playwright. The whole thing is established there. So do you see the importance of the characters and how it's been presented for our benefit? And Arjuna is being placed into doubt for our benefit. He's an eternal associate, but he's being purposely placed into doubt to ask the questions that will arise in our lives. So we are all faced with perplexities. We're all conditioned. That means we're suffering sinful reactions. We have to know how to act so we do not continue to entangle ourselves in future bodies. So this Gita is critical to every one of us here. I'm included. I have a material body. I have to suffer old age right now. I have to face death. Some of you don't have old age yet. And finally, when that time comes, will we pass the test? So it's not, we're not talking about a minor thing here. This is just not a course in self-help skills. This is a little more serious. This is save your soul skills. Okay, everybody got that one now? You understand the importance of the personalities? And the conch shells, we've listed them here. We're going to be talking about that. There are 5. And that's for the 5 Pandavas, and they're described as being transcendental. Some of you may have already learned that. The most important one we see is, we'll see a picture of it, is the Krishna's the Panchajanya. We have a picture of it, actually. It's being worshipped in a temple in Adri Badri, I think. It's huge. Krishna's big, you know, the conch shell's huge. And it's really huge. All right, and then, of course, the other ones, Arjuna has the Devadatta, Bhima has the Pondram. Okay, we have two P's, Panchajanya and Pondram, Devadatta. And Nakula, Yudhisthira, the Ananta Vijaya, right? That's easy, Ananta Vijaya. And Nakula and Sahadev, the Sugosha and the Mani Pushpaka. Okay. You don't have to memorize that all now, but you have it here. These are highlights. What we've done is we've given you highlights in this chapter. So if you have these names, and they're important because these are transcendental conch shells. They're not just conch shells. They're special. All right. Next, stages of destruction. Oh, here we go. There's not enough light here, really. I don't know what's happening with the power. We can't see. Aggressors. What kind of aggressors there are? How many? Everybody know? Yes, for normal people, everybody, by law, if you are subjected to any one of these kinds of aggressors, you have a right to kill the person without any retribution. So we'll see a slide on that right now. And we'll see all 6 of these were done against the Pandavas, yet Arjuna still didn't want to fight. So let's take a quick look. Number 1, the word was what? Poison. The poison came. Number 2 was what? Fire to the house. Did that happen to them? Yes. Number 3, one who attacks with deadly weapons. And what about number 4? Plunders their riches. Yes. And what about number 5? Took their land away, wouldn't give it back. And what about number 6? Yeah, they tried to take Draupadi at the end. I think it was Karna who was supposed to be able to have her at the end, and he gave up. He said they couldn't get the sari off. He said, forget her, I don't want it anymore. But that was the whole point. All 6 types of aggressors were, that he would have had legitimate reasons by general law to fight, but he doesn't even want to do that. So those are your 6 types of aggressors. And we have here, this is also a lot of the stages of destruction. This is very important. There are how many here? You look on your sheet, can you see all right? 6. We can't get more lighting in here? Is this impossible? No, with the screen. All right, so 6. We have the chart. You can look at your chart also. The first thing is that if you kill the superiors, there will be no one. The next step would be the dynasty collapses if you kill the elders, and then irreligion will set in, and then after that, without religious practices, the women are unprotected and they're subjected to being polluted, and the result of that is unwanted progeny, which floods the world, and then you have hellish condition for everybody. So it's the total collapse of a society. Even by material standards, I think it's by the Cartesian theory of economy, that if a society's members become increasingly degraded, the society is in trouble. Makes sense, doesn't it? If you're surrounded by good people, you feel safe. If you're surrounded by plunderers and thieves and rogues, are you feeling peaceful? No, you're afraid to go out. And that's becoming true in more and more places. People are afraid to go outside. They don't know or times of the day even. Even in Vrindavan, you don't want to walk at night in some sections, right? So the world is a dangerous place. So that's the domino theory there. Next, Prabhupada spends a lot of time giving us the nuances of the names in this chapter. So I'm saying we would not understand this chapter without the commentary. So he gives us names of Arjuna, and he gives us names of Krishna. 13 names of Krishna. 13. I counted them up, and we've given you a page, if you look, a section in which you'll see the page reference and the definition. Because these are the nuances of the drama. O Rishikesh, O Govinda, O Janardhan. Right? Or he's being called Gudakesh, or Dhananjaya. There's a meaning to all that. Or he calls him Vishneya. Would you want to kill your family dynasty, Krishna? Every word has an important understanding. So in your study section, you'll see on definitions, you'll see listed the names of Krishna, and you will see the names of Arjuna and where you can read more. Prabhupada goes to great length to explain the nuances in this chapter. Okay? I think the really important ones for us particularly about Arjuna, would be Gudakesh, conqueror of sleep. And in the purport, Prabhupada writes about that when he said he conquers sleep and ignorance. And by taking shelter of Krishna, that's what we do. Sleep is like ignorance. So you conquer sleep and ignorance by taking shelter of Krishna. The whole world who does not have Krishna in their equation is in total ignorance. Total darkness, total ignorance, and nothing left but suffering and repeated birth and death. That's their option. It's pretty terrifying. The important ones for Krishna, they're all important, but particularly Govinda. He goes to a great length. Govinda gives pleasure to the senses. Go, the senses and the cows. So you should be doing what I'm telling you to do. No, it's not like that. We do what Krishna wants us to do, then our senses are satisfied. Also, Rishikesh, he's the master of the mind and the senses. One who is surrendered to Krishna, his mind and his senses are under Krishna's direction proportionately. So on the battlefield, it's actually Krishna who's directing Arjuna. In many cases, stepping in to help him when things don't look so good. Another really important one would be, I would say particularly important, would be Rishikesh, Govinda, and he also mentions Janardhan, protector of the people, maintainer of the people. You'll see that, it's coming up. Okay. So those references are also there, and also Madhav, the goddess of fortune, wherever Krishna is, fortune should be accompanying Krishna. So this gives you, without Prabhupada's purports, perhaps some of you would have known that when you read the Mahabharata, if you grew up in India, or you knew the philosophy. But most, especially people coming to the culture, as newcomers to the culture, this is very helpful. I certainly wouldn't have understood this without Prabhupada's commentaries. It wouldn't have made any sense at all. I would have, okay, that's just another way you call your friend. Krishna has many names. Krishna is his most prominent, but he's addressed according to his activities. Okay? So did you find this very helpful? Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at that slide that shows the red curtain, because part of our objectives in our little tennis shoe slide. Do we have the tennis shoe slide? Somebody may wonder, what is she doing with that one? I don't know where you might have put that, perhaps at the end. Charge. Instructional objectives, topics. Well, if you can't find it, don't worry about it. Show us the red curtain one. Do you have the red curtain one? Nope, not there. Okay, there it is. That's one's up there. All right. Now, this particular, we want to know, what does this chapter do that makes it essential to the book? Because something is more interesting if it's a narrative. This is called an instructional narrative. It's not just a story, make-believe, as some might say. In other words, the philosophy is embedded in a story. Now, a narrative has very specific structure. And you'll see this part of the book sets the stage for the instructions. I think I'll show you a chart here on my map as well so you get the point. Every narrative has a formula. It has 3 parts. Let's see if I can show you here. Okay, I'm going to put 3 dots here. Can you all see that? Every narrative has to have 3 parts, and particularly a drama. Because everything here is dialogue. You don't get just description. You get dialogue in a narration, but in a drama, it's just talking back and forth. Okay, so the first part, we're going to put 2 lines here. The first part is called your setting. S for setting. The next part is called the conflict. C for conflict. There has to be a conflict or there's no interest. If everything's fine every day, nothing happens, it's boring. You're not going to sit and watch it. The final is R for resolution, outcome. So every narration, every drama has those three structural parts, just like every cookie has to have some butter and some sugar and some flour. It's not a cookie. So those are the three parts. What are they again? What's your first part? The setting. The second part is what? The conflict. There has to be some duality there. And the next part is what? The resolution. Now, we don't get this at the very beginning, but we get signs of it, right? That make us curious. Who's going to win? Who's going to win? And there will be signs. You'll see how this is a very important chapter in that regard. Now, the setting has two parts, P and P, place and personalities. Right? So what is the place? And also Hastinapur, right? At the beginning, right? Because he's not there. But the fighting and most of it's going on where? Kurukshetra. Personalities. Right, we've got them, they're listed and they're named, right? But mostly two kinds. Divine and demoniac. Yeah, later when we try to circle the themes in this chapter, there are two, out of the 16 themes in this book, 2 themes are prominent. Vanashram and divine and demoniac natures. Those 2 themes. Because without the divine and demoniac, you don't have the good against the evil. Right? That's there, duality. But this book is supposed to take us beyond duality. What's beyond good and bad? Krishna's order. That's beyond good and bad. Even if it looks bad, it's good. In the material world, something looks good, it's bad. It's a mental concoction. Nothing's good in the material world without Krishna's sanction. So the conflict, you get the plus, the good guys, and you get the what? The bad guys, right? They call them the protagonists in drama and the antagonist. Someone who's antagonistic, he's against you. Someone who's for you is pro. He's protagonist. And you get that. And then for the resolution, question mark. Who will win? Right? Now, in this particular drama, we have 2 kinds of conflict. We have an external conflict of a physical confrontation between brothers, warring families, Kauravas and Pandavas. 2, they're relatives, but they're fighting. Fratricidal, it's called. Fratricidal war. But we have a deeper conflict. That's on the subtle level, internal. That's the 4th section, Arjuna's doubts. That sets the stage for the rest of the Bhagavad-Gita. It could be just another war, and they're killing each other. So what? But this war is taking us to a higher principle where even things that don't look right have to be understood. And that's why only devotees can understand Bhagavad-Gita. Non-devotees can never understand Bhagavad-Gita. Academicians cannot understand it. People who have the wrong conception of Krishna consciousness cannot understand it. Unless you have heard from the disciplic succession through a bona fide person, you will not understand this book. Everybody see the importance of this section? So you have 2 conflicts, internal, external, protagonists, antagonists, 5 speakers, and you know the sections. So now everybody sees the structure of this chapter, its role in the book. Because without this, there's not much interest. You know, people can sit and read Ishopanishads, but there's one speaker. It's not even identified. It's just monologue. But when you have a drama, when you have a conflict, you're curious. You're much more interested. Everybody agree to that? Okay. So you understand that. And finally, the resolution at the end. He agrees to fight, but for the right reason. Fight he will. He's a Kshatriya. But for whom and why? That's the difference between Krishna consciousness and material consciousness. That's what the whole Gita is here to teach us. If we do something to please Krishna, it's Krishna consciousness. That's our only objective. And if we do something to please ourselves, it's material consciousness. That is the whole reason for surrender to Krishna. Everybody understand the part of this now? Okay, so we've got quite a bit to try to cover. So now let's take a look at some of the other sections. Let's take a look quickly at some of the analogies. We're just studying the structure. Believe me, I did this with younger children, and it really works. They've got the whole story, and then when they see the slides, it's just sort of, oh, it's just a little bit of frosting on the cookie, or some raisins in the dough, right? It's just detail. All right, next. We will come across in the first sloka an analogy. As the paddy field, the unwanted plants are taken out. There are two analogies in this chapter. This is one of the important ones, right away. Krishna is there. Kurukshetra is a holy place. The Kauravas have evil intentions, and they're meant to be pulled out like unwanted plants. So that's an important analogy. That's in the first section. Just so you know, right away, we're just highlighting it. You'll find this in the first purport. Okay, another analogy. Birds of the feather. Have you ever heard somebody say, if you want to know what somebody is like, see who he associates with? If somebody associates with rascals, is he going to be a safe friend? No. If you want to know what somebody's like, see who his friends are. Does he pick good friends, or does he pick not so good friends? So this is a sort of a cliche that persons on the side of Duryodhana are birds of the same feather. If you go up on the roof of a building, will you see the parrots with the crows? Will they be together? No. They may be, but they don't sit and talk to each other. So birds of the feather means anybody who had evil-minded Duryodhana on his side, he must be like him. That's why Arjuna wants to see who's siding up with him. Okay, another one. These are important. Here's another one. Third one. If you're not hungry, do you feel like cooking? If you're full, would you want to go cook? No, you don't have an appetite, so you're not inclined to cook. So this is the way Arjuna is feeling when he sees the enemies. He's thinking, I don't feel so inclined to fight. I'm just satisfied with very little. I don't need this. That's the third analogy. And then we have some other philosophical points. Right. Saintly but not cowardly. Prabhupada stresses, he said, people say Vaishnavas are cowards. No, they're not. The two biggest wars were Kurukshetra and Ravana. The other one was Ram against Ravana. He said these were Vaishnavas. They're saintly by nature, but when it's time for a fight, they won't back off. So that's an important philosophical point. Another important philosophical point. Arjuna is the next slide. Next slide. Arjuna is, you don't have that one. There should have been another one. Arjuna feels two kinds of trembling. He's feeling trembling of the body, and he's feeling hair standing on end. And Prabhupada says, well, that's two kinds of ways you can feel that. One would be from material fear, and the other way would be from devotional ecstasy. He said, this is not devotional ecstasy he's feeling. He's feeling material fear. Because if you're in devotional ecstasy, you're on the transcendental platform, and you're not afraid. Prahlad, was he afraid? No, none of us have been in that position. Was Ambarish Maharaj afraid? No, he stood there. He didn't even step back. We would step back because we're not on that platform. So these emotional ecstatic symptoms are only possible for a person who's Brahmabhuta, at least. And unless you have transcended the material conditional Jiva-bhuta stage, you will feel material pangs. Trembling, you'll tremble. Your mouth is going to dry up. Your mind is going to be disturbed. Your skin will burn. Those symptoms are there. You'll drop your Gandiva bow that you'll never put down, right? So the symptoms are there. That slide, it's somehow or other, we're borrowing from these are old slides from 2 years ago, but we found some of them were still at least pretty good. Okay? Philosophical points, do we have a section for that one? I think there was a folder that was called Philosophical Points. There we go, let's take a look at that. Yeah, this one starts out, the whole first verse, what did they do? That sounds pretty ordinary. They're there to kill each other. No, that's not his question. I don't want to compromise. I don't want my sons to go there, and because it's a holy place, to get soft-hearted and then agree to a compromise. I want the Pandavas dead. That's what he wants. He doesn't want to compromise. Okay? So you see that this subtle understanding to these small line, first sloka, so much depth there. Next, and then here's that important one, knowing what the part of this chapter is in the whole drama. It's an archetype for all dramas. Next. And Prabhupada said in the first purport, one should read Bhagavad-Gita very what? Scrutinizingly. So that's what we do here. We try to give you a little bit of understanding so that it's not just I've read through the verses and I know them and I can maybe even recite some by heart, but you actually have a very in-depth understanding of what is going on and what does it mean to my life. My life is in the hands of Krishna. I'm the pilot of my destiny. Okay, next. And here, Duryodhana's diplomacy in the verses like 3 through 12, or 11 at least. It's all his diplomacy. He's a diplomat. And that's explained in Bhurajan Prabhu's book, Surrender Unto Me. The subtleties of how he deals with people. He's nervous, but he pretends not to be. But he can't really hide it. And how he manipulates people. He's obviously Duryodhana. Okay, next. And then the important aspects of warning people. Now this actually is after Bhishma is out of the picture. It was Drona who arranged the Chakravyuha. But the importance of making sure that the warriors and the captains didn't leave their posts, didn't run away. To be a Kshatriya and leave, you're not a Kshatriya. You're there and you fight till death. You fight till death. But you have to follow the rules also. There are codes of conduct. Okay? And the next one, philosophical points. And Draupadi, she's appealing for justice. She asked for justice from Drona and Bhishma, and they were silent. So they actually lost their standing. They lost their standing. They were accepting food from Duryodhana and probably becoming infected by the food. So they were not in a position to make the right decisions. Vidura did. And I think even Vikarna spoke up. He was the brother, one of the brothers. But nobody spoke up. What we're doing is wrong. Come on. All right, next. Signs of victory. That's the next section, remember? That's the conch shell. That's Krishna's conch shell. Look at it. That's the real one. Huge. You see it's marked with kumkum like that? Goddess of fortune. She's present. Not on the battlefield visibly, but she accompanies. So good fortune is with them. The chariot. The chariot was donated by Agni, and it could conquer all sides. And the final one, the flag. Who's on the flag? Do you know? Hanuman, yes. Hanuman had also previously in another pastime agreed to be there when needed to Bhima. So Hanuman and of course Ram and Sita, another goddess of fortune, they're also there. So we have about 7 signs of victory. Remember we talked about what are the clues, who's going to win. That's established right away. First you get the setting and the drama and the characters, and then you get the clues, who's going to win. All right, and then we have any more? Yes, Krishna's present with his conch, and they're at the end of the war. You know how it was signaled? Krishna blew the conch. At the end of the war, Krishna blew the conch. That signaled the end. Okay? And there's Lakshmi. She's the goddess of fortune. She's there. So fortune accompanies Krishna and Arjuna. And then the next one, what do we have? The chariot donated by Agni. And there's Hanuman on the flag, presence of Sita and Ram. Okay, those were the subdivisions. Okay, and these are the four, we covered those, the four symbols. Compassion, remember? And what? Happiness and fear of sin. And the final one was destruction of the dynasty. Right, and we saw how that happened. There was the one. Yes, the two signs of, was he afraid or was he feeling ecstasy? He was afraid. He was materially afraid. All right, so that was very good. So now what we're going to do really quickly is take a look at tomorrow how we're going to do some slides as we go through. The slides I think will be pretty easy for us tomorrow because we'll go through the slides and see how to do it. When we presented the, I did a little differently. When we presented the slokas here for you, we put underlined the important words. So you'll see that they've been highlighted and underlined, okay? And then you have a little quiz later on in which the main word is left out. So if you go back a little further, you'll see the same thing repeated, and you'll see a blank. And that is your trigger word. We call it your anchor trigger word, where we take one word and we put it under a picture, because that's easy to remember. So when we're going to look at some sloka slides, we'll just run through a few. Let's go back to the sloka slides. Oh, let's go back, I'm sorry, let's go back to your study guide. This is important. The section in your study bank that shows the themes. If you look here, you see it on the third side. Bhagavad-Gita, as it is, 16 themes. Please circle number 9 and number 11. These are the prominent themes in this chapter. Divine and demoniac natures, the devotee and the non-devotee. You'll see the mentality, quite different. Arjuna is a very compassionate, soft-hearted devotee, and the other side is completely materially oriented to the extent that they can't even recognize the power of Krishna's presence on the other side. They prefer material strength to transcendental wisdom. they're spiritually blind. So number 9, that's the devotee and the non-devotee. They're contrasted. And number 11 is the Varnashram system. That Prabhupada elaborates on that a great deal. And that's important because that's the big issue now in ISKCON. How do we establish Varnashram? Because Prabhupada in one place will say we have to do it, and then another place will say it's impossible. So what do? It's there, whether you establish it or not. Even in the spiritual world, the Brahmanas are called in to do the sacrifice. Rohini and Balaram are of one group. They're Kshatriya background. Krishna is of a Vaishya background. It's there. It's there even in the bee society, honeybees. There'll be the queen and the drones and the workers. And it's there. But in Kali Yuga, it won't work by itself. It's there for the external behavior. But your constitutional Sanatana Dharma is the same. We all chant Hare Krishna, we study Bhagavad-Gita. That's spiritual. But the others somebody may be a cook, somebody may be a kirtaniya, somebody may like to do paintings. That's according to your birth, your varna and your guna karma. So you have two. But it's always there. Even in the higher planetary systems, there are gradations. Brahma's on a higher platform than Indra, right? You'll see. So it's there. You can't deny it. But those are not permanent. They're not Sanatan. Okay? Everybody got the two themes? Now let's just take a look at how the sloka slides work. Because tomorrow we're going to run through those, and we'll also give you some historical proof of Kurukshetra being a place, not myth, the Mahabharata being exact, correct to the letter, not myth, Krishna being a real personality, not myth, and Saraswati River being real, not myth. You need to feel confident when you tell people that, not just, well, I believe. You don't want to be blind followers. Okay, so let's see how, we don't need those now. We'll just do some slokas. We'll go to the sloka slide really quickly. All right, now for the first sloka, what's the word? We're going to run through the words, just that. That's all. We'll do the 46 words and look at a picture quickly. What's our first word? Everybody? Louder? Kurukshetra. First sloka, Kurukshetra. Okay, and there it is. It's a real place. It's not a myth. It's there, north of Delhi. Next. And the next sloka, what's the word? Louder? Louder? Very good. So they can hear you there. Duryodhana. I'll repeat it if you're loud enough. And I'll make you say it 3 times if you... Okay. Number 3 sloka. What's the word? Teacher. Oh, my teacher. Right. That's Duryodhana talking to Drona. 3rd sloka. Next sloka. Because when you go back home, you can try to fill in your little quiz. All right. Next sloka. What's the key word? Bowmen. Yes, there are great bowmen on that side. They're not ordinary fighters. They're great bowmen. Okay. That's sloka 4. Number 5. What else are they? They're powerful fighters, like Bhima. He had the strength of 10,000 elephants. That's not minor. They're powerful fighters. They're not just ordinary infantry. Next, what's your next word? Chariot. And there are a lot of them who are, they're special kinds of fighters. They're, what kind are they? Chariot fighters. Not everybody fights on a chariot. Some fight on elephants. Just like in our military, you know, we have people that are in the Marines, some people are in the Air Force, some people are in the Army, different divisions of fighters. It's not all the same. So they had some that were fighting a different way. And what's our next one? Oh, that 2 signs of the chariot there. Sometimes I had, and what other, now he's going to say, but, my side. What do we have here? We have captains. They're strong enough to lead my force. And what's the next one? And there are many great, what? Personalities. Here's his diplomacy, like you. He's got to flatter him, right? And the next one. And they're also what? They're heroes. They've proven themselves before. And what else do we have on our side? Oh, but you must do what? You must support, you have to support Bhishma because he's older. Don't leave the phalanx, don't leave him unprotected. Okay, and next? And then, of course, who's this person? Bhishma, right. He's ready now to blow the conch loudly to give Duryodhana joy. And next? And what's the sound like? Tumultuous. Prabhupada writes about that. He said, you know, it's true. Even now today, the military, they'll have their displays, the drummers, the corps, and the bugles, and they'll go to the Rose Bowl and they'll march in front of all the crowd. You know, they're showing off their. So he said they need to be fired up. So tomorrow we'll hear a little background music to that. Okay, next section really fast. We want to go through signs of victory. What's the first one? Conch shells, and then next. There it is, the Panchajanya. That's the one. Okay, and next? And Yudhisthira. Of course, they list a lot of personalities from now. We'll get the list of personalities, quite a few slokas. Next? And who's this one? Drishtadyumna. He's the one who was born out of the fire to kill Drona, specifically. It's a whole fight of revenge. We should be so grateful to Lord Chaitanya that we just chant Hare Krishna. I don't think if we had to go through all the revenge, and it never ends. You'll see, material world, that this revenge and that revenge and this revenge, and it never ends. You have to get above that. Okay, and then next, who's that? Drupad. Yeah, they've gone to Drupad, the Pandavas. They're looking to take Draupadi as their wife. And next? And what happens when they hear the Pandava conch shells? Their hearts are what? They're shattered. But the Pandavas don't feel that when they hear the other side, because Krishna's on their side. There's no fear. Okay, and next? And who's that? Hanuman, he's on the flag. Right, that's a sign. And what's your other sign now? What was? Oh, topic 3, Krishna's Bhakti-Vatsal. Let's take a peek. Let's see what's that. Yes, 2. How many sides are there? Yeah, he wants to see who's on the 2 sides. He wants to go in the middle. Okay, and then what do? This is the word trial of arms. Who's going to win the trial of arms? And next? And what's he like? Can you read it? Louder? He's evil-minded. It's Duryodhana. He's evil-minded. Look at him. He's talking to Drona. Come on, look and see. Okay, next. And where does Arjuna want the chariot to go? Right in the middle of both sides, so I can see who's here. Next. And then Krishna speaks. Behold, look at all of the what? What's the word? Can you read it? Is it bright enough? Kurus. Your family members. Look at all of them. Just behold, Partha, all of the Kurus. He's trying to incite Krishna. Look at this. Your relatives are there. What are you going to do? Back out? Next. And he's a list of what kind of people? Fathers. In this case, I picked Drona because he's considered a father. Their father is gone. Pandava's father is gone. But a teacher is considered a father. What else do we have? Yeah, he's feeling what? Loudly? Compassion. Remember the first of the... He's feeling compassion. And how does that manifest? Next. Okay. What happens to him? Quivering. The limbs are quivering out of fear, not ecstasy, remember? And the next? What happens? What else? He's Gandhivabo. He said, I'll never put it down. And he drops it. Okay, next. And he sees signs of what? Misfortune. I don't see anything good coming out of this. And there is another one, misfortune. I don't see any reason to do this. What's in this for me? And then how can I expect any what? Louder? Happiness. How could there be any happiness from killing my relatives? How can I enjoy? Next. Oh, what? Govinda. Oh, Govinda. And next? On the battlefield, right? And then these are all my relatives are there. He's looking at my relatives. They're ready to give their life. Why should I wish to kill them even though they see something is wrong? Relatives. Next picture. And he said, what? Here's the other one, enjoyment. Pleasure. What pleasure will we get from this? What pleasure will we get from this? Next. Sin. This is the next one. Sin will overcome us. They may not realize it, but we do. We don't want to be on their level. And next, their hearts are what? Their hearts are overtaken by greed. When one is greedy, nothing stops him. Even the truth won't stop him. And finally, yeah, there's another one, a close-up of Duryodhana. His heart is taken by greed. Look at his face. It's his index. And finally, they don't see the crime, but we do. And that will stop at that one because that leads us into the final section, the destruction of a dynasty. It's quite logical. And how that's such a major crime, to destroy the elders, to destroy the dynasty. It's such a heavy, heavy reaction for that. So we'll stop there. We've run over. We have lots of extra prasadam. It's Ekadasi. I think everybody can have 2 pieces if you can manage. And be sure you return your exam boards. You may keep your packets. Not the pens, please return the materials. And tomorrow we will go through the final slides from 28 to 46, and we will look at some evidence that you can equip yourselves with in proving that Kurukshetra is there, the battle was there, Mahabharata was convinced. We'll take a look at that tomorrow. So we thank you so much for coming. We've run over about almost 15 minutes. Thank you so much for participating. Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is for tomorrow. We're going to be looking at 18 is significant because it's not only 18 chapters in the Gita. There are 18 days in the war. There are 18 books in the Mahabharata. And there are 18 divisions on the battlefield. 11 on the side of the Kauravas, and 7 on the side of the Pandavas. So 18 is a very important number tomorrow. You'll see that. Everything is significant. There's meaning to everything. Not that's the only thing. Because some people say, oh, everything in the Gita is symbolic. You know, the chariot and the mind and Kurukshetra, it's the battlefield. No, Prabhupada said, no, it's a real place. There's that level, but that doesn't mean the place doesn't exist, right? So I hope you all found this was a good way to set the stage. That's what the first chapter does for your own study and understanding. And we pray that you can join us again to find out a little bit more about Kurukshetra, some of the holy places there. And I think it's very nice to know that Srila Prabhupada met Srimati, what was her name, the one who gave him the ticket? Yes. She saw Prabhupada chanting softly somewhere, and being a very pious Indian lady, she went up to him and she asked for blessings. And he struck her. She could see he was a very saintly person. And she said, if I may ever be of any help to you, please let me know. So it's not a coincidence that the lady who gave him the ticket that took him to America, that brought us all here, met him at Kurukshetra. So you see, everything has its very symbolic importance. Yeah, that's a very nice pastime. So thank you so much.